welcome everybody. Thank you for attending today. Thank you to Dave Feenan and all of his team at ICT SkillNet for organizing this and inviting us to speak. My name is Leo Payton. I'm Commercial Director at Iasa Global. And my colleague Paul Preiss, who's the CEO and founder of Iasa, is going to do a talk with you today on lessons learned from successful solution architects. What I would like to do very briefly first, for those of you that aren't familiar with Iasa Global, is just give a little introduction to the organization and to what we do. So Iasa Global is a not-for-profit professional association, is a leading professional body for all IT architects around the world. It has a globally recognized certification pathway for architects and is very much focused on the skills of the individual and how over your career, how we grow the skills of the individual to be a better architect. To that extent, it is technology and vendor agnostic. It is focused on how we can teach you the skills of an architect. There are essentially three things that Iasa Global does as an organization. The first is very much focused on learning and certification pathways. So as you can see, the core pathway that has been developed over many years for architects from those starting out their career with foundation level certifications through to associate level certifications in solution architecture, and then on to the professional and the senior levels, so seated professional and then the seated distinguished architect pathway. Either side of that core pathway, we've got some specialization programs. So these are real depth areas, topic areas that focus on things like agile architecture, integration architecture and blockchain, AI architecture, and so on. And then also we have master's style programs where we teach everybody from executives to product managers and developers some of the skills of architecture and do it very much focused on being able to apply what they're learning through the programs to real world scenarios, whether they be customer programs or internal projects that they're running. The second thing that Iasa does is it provides corporate engagements. These can be the form of advisory services through our CETA's distinguished community, practice assessments. We help organizations in gaining digital advantage from programs that they're implementing. We do center of excellence development with organizations and so on. And then the final element of Iasa and what we try to achieve is around the development of architect communities. This we do in a number of ways. So we do it through local chapters. For example, the chapter in Ireland, which is run by Mick Callan, our partnership with ICS here in Ireland. So we seek to develop these chapters in various countries around the world, and we also have corporate partners that help us to develop communities in various countries. Through those communities, we're looking at bringing the architects together. We run a series of events and we develop content for those communities. So this year we took over architectureandgovernance.com as an example to provide some quality content to the architect community. We're always looking for authors for that site if anybody is interested. And we also run events. So one of the event series we have at the moment is the Build Conference series, which is a 24-hour program that runs 3 times a year. And the next event happening on the 19th and 20th of November on a topic of architecting for global good. So all of our event programs are free to attend, and you're very welcome to join if you wish. And lastly, we also work a lot with government and universities. There's an example here in Ireland where we've accredited a master's program through TU Dublin. And the next version of that master's program starts in January of next year, if that would be of interest. So that gives you a very high level understanding of Iasa and what we do. if you have any questions on it, please feel free to drop me an email. And with that, I would like to hand it over to my colleague, Paul Preiss.
Hello. We're here to talk about solution architecture. It's actually interesting because I'm literally in the middle of teaching a solution architect class right now. I don't know if we have anybody on from the class, but so they're taking an hour and doing a workshop, but while I come to get and talk to you. I've been really excited about this talk. We've learned a lot over the last few years. Iasa has done, and I've done the opportunity to do a number of interviews, so dozens and dozens of interviews of architects of kind of all stripes and types, data architects, enterprise architects, but a significant number of solution architects. And I wanted to share today, I guess, some, not all, but of the learning from that process and what we've done and what we saw and what solution architects are learning about their practice. Now, there's a whole host of definitions of what a solution architect is. Everything from a full stack architect all the way up to a program level architect in a highly safe, for example, oriented area, or project level architect. We use a number of different definitions and ways of determining that, and we're going to talk just a little bit about that. But the idea is that there is effectively a scale of what a solution architect looks like. And it goes all the way from delivering on a relatively small or mid-sized project at a startup, and all the way up to a full class, multi-million-dollar solution, even tens of millions of dollars solution, or more. A variety of things that we call solution architects, which I'll shed a little bit of light on through this. However, I only have about 30 to 40 minutes to talk to you, so we're not going to go too far into that. But needless to say, it's an area that Iasa does a lot of research and discussion in. So I'm Paul Preiss. I'm the CEO and founder of Iasa. I was effectively a solution architect myself. I was a software solution architect. I was Dell's chief architect for their online platforms for about 14 countries in Asia, as well as done a number of larger, smaller product architecture for a small startup, all the way through $200 million projects for large retailers. So I've been a bit around the architect field my entire career. About 2002, I started Iasa as a chance to interact with architects, because again, what we're doing today is what I think we need a lot more of, which is sharing our experience, sharing what we do, where we come from. I wanted to share with you the definition that Iasa uses of what architecture is, and we sweated over this quite a lot. And it is a little different than anything that you see in the market today. The Iasa uses the definition to describe the benefit that our clients can get from working with us. And again, our definition of architecture is not just for solution architecture, but for business architecture, enterprise architecture, the infrastructure architecture, app architecture. We've cataloged somewhere around 30 or 40 different architecture titles out there. But for us, the primary interest is what makes an architect. The definition that we use is the art and science of designing and delivering valuable technology strategy. And that valuable word we're going to come back to, because you might, and if you're a business architect listening to this, this valuable part is all about what you do. And how do we define value in a business? The technology strategy part is what allows us to function as digital advisors, digital advantage agents, digital transformation change agents. I've heard it called literally 1,000 things. But the reason this is important, the technology part, is because something like 68% of business leaders list digital transformation as a top priority for their business. In fact, in many cases, a number of Fortune 10 CEOs and banks, or Fortune 50 CEOs and banks and whatnot, have said effectively technology is business. They are inseparable. If that's the case, then being a technologist doesn't mean that you're just in the code. It means that you are the business. So as we start moving forward, these are the kind of lessons that Iasa has learned through the years about what makes a great solution architect. And we're going to bring this down a notch from the great enterprise class architect or the business architect or infrastructure, and just again talk about that solution architect role. Because everything we have found for over 20 years of studying architects, looking at architectures, studying architecture practices has led us to the same conclusion. Solution architects are technical product owners, not senior development leads. They can have been senior development leads. They can have been business analysts, technical project managers, test. Even many of our solution architects have come from the business, learned technology, and are now successfully delivering projects. But the reason that we're technical product owners is because form is more important than, is more or as important as structure in architecture, especially complex architecture delivery. Now, what do I mean by form? In the book by Alan Brown and al. They describe form in architecture starts in the eye of the beholder, or in a deep process that transcends human existence. Well, this was a picture of a wonderful museum that I love, and it actually describes to me what the nature of form is in solution architecture, which is a little bit different than what we see elsewhere. In my mind, form for solution architecture is effectively the value received by the end user or the customer or the organization from the delivery of that software. In fact, the value of a piece of a solution is actually at its lowest when it's deployed. And I'd like you to think about that, because most solution architects throw a party as soon as they deploy their software or their solution. But in fact, the business doesn't throw a party until that solution has paid for itself, what we call the break-even point. And they really don't throw a party until it starts to really return on the investment after that break-even point. The importance of that means that in architecture, form beats function every time. We think about this in terms of digital advantage, right? A solution architect's goal is to look at the entire cycle of a solution, from innovation, where it originated, into its program and project investment, how people decided to invest in that solution, through what capabilities in the business is it going to impact. And those capabilities are being impacted by all the solutions that your architects are working on. The value management aspects of a solution, what value does it create? What makes one user story or one epic more important than another? How do we prioritize the backlog if we can't put value on which one of those are actually going to create outcomes? And we're going to come back to this when we talk about one of our other rules. Operational excellence. Now, I find that a lot of our architects spend a lot of time on operational excellence, DevOps, agile project management excellence, good requirements, delivery, stable systems, structural excellence, and those are unbelievably important. And that's how we, one of the most important aspects of being a solution architect. The engagement model itself is about the practice of architecture and delivering on digital advantage. If you take all of these aspects together, it defines your role as an architect in the solution space. Now, many of you may work for large companies where you have differentiated roles, where you may have business architects or infrastructure architects, etc. But the practice of solution architecture is one of delivering value, whether you have specialist roles or not. So many of you are going to be highly technical, and you'll be excellent at operational excellence and delivery. But the challenge in that is understanding what to deliver. We deliver faster and faster and faster, but we still need to look at delivering the better and better and better. Not just quality solutions, but solutions that impact the bottom line of the organization. One of the things I'd like to say as you are delivering your solutions is design emerges, but architecture is proven. We've asked this question a number of times. What is the difference between a design and an architecture? Grady Bush, one of the foremost thinkers in architecture for many, many years, has said that all architectures are design, but not all designs are architectures. For us, we look at the architecture as the set of decisions which structurally create the form or the outcome that we desire. Again, those outcomes are defined by value. And value is an oft thrown around term where we say that's valuable and that's not. What we've looked at is a series of methods by which architects can demonstrate real value and actually prove it with data. So using real valuation techniques helps us to understand what form we want to create. Our additional responsibility is to understand structural excellence so that the structural integrity of the solution remains. As you can see, this is the same building as before. It's just a view of the structure of that system. Now, as you can tell, you probably wouldn't want to visit this as a museum because it doesn't have any art in it and it might fall on your head. But the notion that structure and form are interrelated is one of the key research and or knowledge points of a solution architect. Now, we have to be careful, though, because sometimes features or speed can actually destroy form. Obviously, this would be a less interesting museum to visit. It's actually, I'm not sure it's actually a museum, but the notion that if we build faster doesn't mean that we build better. I want to build as fast as possible, but I want to build things that provide competitive advantage, citizen value, mission success. And those kinds of activities are equally important to doing great structural or great development efforts. Architecture is the important stuff, whatever that is. As we understand these kinds of trade-off analysis, what we get into is understanding how decisions are made. The important stuff means there are some things that require really great decisions out of a multifunctional team. And it isn't that architects are the only ones that make that decisions. It's that we take training and effort to develop a rigorous decision support system. At Iasa, we use a thing called the structured canvas approach, and we actually provide these canvases free and in an open source format on our IDABOT pages for you to download to make better decisions. This is just one of many, many numerous connected cards and canvases that we use in this approach to help surface critical decisions in ways that allow a team, an architect, and an organization to make the best decisions possible where necessary. It provides context, decision outcomes, option selection. We always know that 3 options is best, but 2 options is fine as well, as long as we know that one option isn't a decision. It's a choice, but it's not a decision. Characteristics of decisions are just as important. How important is this decision? And notice that in this tool, what we're doing is surfacing the notion of architecture decisions from the team level so that we can make them effectively. You're designing an ecosystem, not just a system. That means that you're looking at the entire landscape of delivery and after deployment, not just the down and into the code you're writing or the infrastructure you're delivering, but really trying to understand what the impacts of that will be in a deployed environment, assuming that you have a significant amount of systems in place already. Even as a startup, you would be developing an ecosystem or the beginnings of an ecosystem. And just think about all of the traditional examples, Uber and Airbnb. The business model challenges are the reasons this ecosystem exists. Businesses are dependent on opportunities to grow through technology today. You are the most important resource in some ways during the COVID crisis, but also before and after. For the next 20 to 50 years, technology is going to be the key driver to business outcomes. And solution architects have to understand what those business model challenges are and key decisions that need to be made during project delivery to make that successful. Customers are changing. They expect new tools, new ecosystems, and new costs. Customers are involved in pseudo-information. They think they know what's going on. We have to be able to lead and guide our business to be able to decide on key aspects that are going to impact customer success. Solution architects can hold competing ideas in their mind. There seems to be some problem with the sizing of that slide. That says hold competing mindsets comfortably together. That means we have to have a zero defect mindset, as well as a customer driven mindset, as well as a time to market mindset, as well as a business value mindset, as well as a structural excellence mindset, all competing with each other in our minds all at once. Great solution architects can think about a lot of things at once. In fact, there's an old joke about if you have 3 architects in a room, you've got 12 opinions. And that's a joke because what we do is we never walk into a situation assuming we know the answer. We're looking deep into the context of the decisions that need to be made and understand what are the trade-offs, because any decision we make is going to have a trade-off. It's also important within that to gather multiple types of experience. You see solution architects that come from business analysts, then programmer, then into project management, then over into the business, then into infrastructure. They use a lot of different muscles to be able to get a very centered and very open and objective view on the kinds of technical and or solution decisions we should make. Great solution architects have a quality attribute focus. Quality attributes are the abilities and iliancies of a system, of performance, security, reliability, resilience. As you could, there are a lot of stressors, as a good friend of mine, Barry O'Reilly, says in his Anti-Fragility and Complex Systems class. As he says, there's just a lot of stressors that your systems are going to come under, and you can't plan for all of them, but you can build resilient systems that heal or protect themselves and recover from significant amounts of stress in the environment. If you think about what a building goes through during a significant storm, we know how to design complex systems. What we as architects and solution architects have to do is look for all the possible areas where we might get hit from. This is a set of solution architecture or software architecture and infrastructure architecture patterns that drive resilient systems. Everything from circuit breaker all the way through different communication types of patterns. Notice the overlap of patterns within certain types of resilience, things like mitigation versus recovery versus treating a problem. We study these patterns so that we can implement them in an overlapping fashion to be sure that our software, our infrastructure, and our business systems are resilient to not just technical stress, but also business stress. There are numerous patterns that allow us to understand what our system should do when pricing changes for our competitors, or what our systems should do when we decide to acquire a new business. So solution architects are focused on quality attributes as a structural reinforcer for the whole point of for the outcome, the form of that system. You don't get certainty, you get comfortable with uncertainty. Now, this is one of my favorite concepts in architecture. Most of IT and most engineers who make up the vast majority of IT are used to and crave certainty. I find that the great solution architects in the world are comfortable with, if not crave, uncertainty. And what does that mean? I was just teaching the solution architecture class, and you'll notice up behind me, I have the word swag. And For those of you who don't know what that means, it means scientific wild ass guess. What we don't understand about modern business is we look to our business partners to answer the problems, but great architects are actually actively leading and guiding the digital transformation work that they're involved with because they're making guesses too. What we don't understand is that our business partners spend all their time in the business world, but they don't know all the answers because we're all looking at the future trying to figure out what's going to happen. No one knew that COVID was going to hit. And those organizations that had invested significantly beforehand in transforming their enterprise into a digitally enabled, digitally driven organization were able to have been able to weather the storm in a better way. As architects, you need to crave the access to the information that will allow you to make the best recommendation to your other business partners, to executive management, or to IT about which way we should invest our dollars and how that investment should pay off. Number 7 is it's minimum valuable product, not minimum viable product. Minimum viable product makes you think of feature sets. Minimum valuable product makes you think of what your customer is going to experience. And by customer, I don't mean your stakeholders and sales staff. Those are stakeholders. Those are people you work with. Customers are the ones that buy your product. Minimum valuable product comes, and you can see a couple of again, the notion of our traceability in value decisions. But minimum valuable product comes from understanding deeply the business goals that drive your solution, so that while you're in the midst of technical decision making, you have just as much product owner information related to the technical investment as your partner business product owner does as well. And together you influence the outcome in such a way that you can create the optimal response. We talked a lot about the tension between agile and architecture, and it is a very real tension. But to answer that, Iasa has come up with the notion of healthy tension. I grew up in construction, and I can tell you that the architects, the structural engineers, and the construction workers, the electricians, and the plumbers each have very much their own opinion on how a building should be built, how electricity and water should be provided. And each one of them had a healthy respect for their own knowledge and pulled that project in a direction that they felt was best for it. In IT, we tend to avoid this architect to dev lead to project manager to business analyst to product owner kinds of conflict. But in fact, if you look at healthy teams, conflict is welcome. It is just welcome in a constructive way. So I always say great architects are a part of the project team. They are not there to review deliverables. They are there to proactively provide a different perspective, one that's driven on business outcomes, one that's driven on enterprise level structural integrity, one that's driven on stakeholder understanding. In fact, a great solution architect is paving the road for the team. It's not people skills, it's stakeholder management. It's not just about being a people person. There are so many successful solution architects I've met that are naturally introverts, but they use a rigorous stakeholder management approach driven based off of a deep understanding of how a stakeholder works, what they need, what they're driven from, what their environment looks like. They're eager to understand the mind of their stakeholder. They're eager to find out what drives their success, and they do that in a systemic way. At Iasa, we have a very robust stakeholder management program in the IDABOC, and I keep saying Iasa, but the truth is Iasa is just a whole bunch of architects working together to figure out the things that work. These tools allow us to get in the minds of our stakeholders, understand what their pains are, what their gains are, and what they're hoping to accomplish. Get an engagement model now. The number one problem I see with architect teams today of any type is that they are so individually focused. They're individually contributing, and they're not actually developing an engagement model together that makes sense for their architecture practice. Now, whether you report to the same group or not is not the most difficult part. We in IT are used to center of excellence models. And in fact, Iasa helps organizations all the time develop these centers of excellence so that architects from different and disparate groups, also with different types, business, information, infrastructure, software, and solution, can work together to have an engagement model. Because building complex things with unskilled people or with a disconnected environment that don't work together is just both dangerous and stupid, right? And I mostly leave this slide in just because it's a funny looking, it's Andy Warhol with a banana, but it's not Andy Warhol, he just has the hair. The engagement model that Iasa is working on, and version 3 of the IDABOK is coming out soon, defines a digital advantage practice. And it defines it in a descriptive way with advice, guidance, and tools for how you can deal with all of the concepts that are going to bump into you as you do solution architecture. Those are things like, what does an architecture repository look like? What should be stored in? How do I make architectural decisions? And you've seen a couple of those. How do I manage stakeholders? What are some techniques? And we like to think of the IDABOK as a set of connected techniques that we've extracted from working practices all over the world, both big and small, vendor and non-vendor, service integrator and end user company alike, that help you do a particular task. We hope to be done with this in early 2021. We're already about halfway there. But even if it's gathering architectural requirements, there's a tool there. If it's understanding agility, there's a set of tools there. If it's understanding quality attributes or architectural analysis, there are a set of tools and descriptions there, as well as links to all the resources that we've compiled and or brought together from other wonderful providers like the SEI or the Open Group or FIAF or many of our partners in the Business Architect Guild. The notion that there is a practical, applicable body of knowledge is also dependent on you to participate. So those are my 10 things to drive solution architecture. The 10 successful pieces, I guess, I will remind you again, is that solution architects are technical product owners. Design emerges, but architecture is proven. We use rigorous decision-making skills to make sure that we deliver value. MVP is not minimum viable product, it's minimum valuable product. Usage is all about value. Healthy tension is good for a team, and decisions are first-order objects within them. You're designing an ecosystem, not just a system. Be able to hold competing mindsets comfortably. Decide and maximize quality attributes from the beginning, and people skills are not enough. You have to have a rigorous stakeholder management practice, and you don't get more certainty, you get better at dealing with uncertainty. And then finally, take the time, meet the other architects in your practice. If you can't answer the question, how many architects work for your company, go figure that out tomorrow. Because together, you make up what architecture is at the organization. And as long as you build an engagement model that makes sense, you will change it immediately. So that's my presentation, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, if anybody has any questions, if they'd like to drop them into the Q&A icon, that would be fantastic. Okay, we've got, just as we're talking, we've got one question's come in. It's more of a thought. My experience is from physical architecture and design, and it's fascinating to hear tools you have built to teach this subject. I believe you should think of provide solutions for them. Great talk, thank you.
Thank you. You know what? I want to recommend a book. It's called The Architect Says. If you came from physical architecture, you would love this book. I picked it up at the Tate Museum, but you get it anywhere, I think. And it's a series of quotes from building architects, and we often will include it as the sort of final, in a kind of kit for our students, because even though it's all about building architecture, it's really a common set of experiences. And I sat there and read it twice. It's a super easy read, and you will laugh and you will cry and you will enjoy it. I think one of the greatest anecdotes from it was what a building architect actually talks to their client about has nothing to do with the kind of house that client wants. It has to do with what they're going to do in that house. And it's all about those kinds of extracting, not the structure, but the form of the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one more. What are the main challenges between IT and product business?
So there's product management, and then there's business units. There are a host of challenges we have today. I would say one of the biggest challenges we have is to start getting to start actually training. We use the word inception a lot. It's one of my favorite movies, but also it's really critical to train our business units to see technology not as a cost, but as an investment, right? That you're investing now in the future of the company. Another one is that we've got to start building a proactive response unit, not even a response unit, a proactive set of units to lead business, not follow. We've been trained for 50 years to wait for requirements and think about, wait for the business. The words "the business," I always use quotes because I'm the business. You're the business. We all work for the same company. Even if I'm a consultant, when I walk through that door, I give myself to that business. So the thing is that we've got to start getting a value language in IT. We've got to start thinking about how can we lead, not just wait for the business. We also have to buy into the end result of the investment, not just the deployment. So those are some things that need to happen. We need to push ourselves to provide a digital strategy for our organization on a stable basis.
Okay, so thank you very much, Paul. Once again, thanks very much to ICT SkillNet, to Dave Feenan and all the team there for the opportunity to chat with you today.
Appreciate that much.
And Dave has asked if I will highlight the talk that you've got coming up next week. So creativity for a culture of innovation with Paul Hearns and Joanne Mull. And also take a look at, if it'll move, take a look at the schedule of webinars coming up over the next couple of weeks for ICT. We've got four webinars happening over the next number of weeks. And as I mentioned earlier on in my introduction, if anyone is interested in the Masters in Software Solution Architecture, here's the email address to get in touch and submit your CV. Okay. And finally, again, as Paul mentioned, if anybody's got any questions or they'd like some more information on Iasa or Paul's talk, please just drop us an email and get in touch. We'd be happy to help. Thank you very much, everybody.
And join the Build conference next week. It's free, 24 hours.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Great.
So much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this webinar, please follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn to be kept up to date with all our news, events and programs. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this one.